Our buddy John Keim of ESPN.com, who covers the Commanders, joins us. John, a lot of different directions we can go in ahead of minicamp tomorrow, but can you set the table for us? It's 3 days. What is expected to be covered by the staff, and just how significant are the next 72 hours when they get going here?
I mean, it's a continuation of what they've been doing in the OTA. So a lot more install. And when you have this many new people, new staff, new players, I think all these installs are very important. So, typically, this, like a lot of times that third day gets canceled because, this group has put in a ton of work, great attendance through the OTAs. There's that reward at the end of the week, but because it's a new situation, it wouldn't shock me if they keep that third day just because of how much they have to install. And so I think that's where the big part is. And just, you go through, like, they've been able to go through situations, like we've watched them run the no huddle. We've watched, a lot of situational stuff, which is teams do, but that's what they've been doing now. And so I think they have to get through more of that as well. So yeah, it's a big week too, because then it's the last time they see them before they report back in July. So you need to make sure that you're in a good spot at the end of this week.
This is also the first mandated work, but I don't know that that matters for them because they've had full attendance already, right?
Correct. Right. That's a good point. It's mandatory. The other stuff obviously is voluntary, but they haven't had guys skip. So they haven't had that storyline this year.
John, I haven't seen anything on this, so forgive me, but how has Jayden Daniels handled learning everything brand new? Obviously adjusting to life in the NFL, but like he's learning a new offense, learning a new language. Everything about it is new and different. How has he handled it so far?
So far, good. And so you can only go by what you hear, right? And so what you're hearing is a lot of good stuff about him, but it's the stuff that you heard about him during the draft process as well that, I've had people close to him describe him as a football nerd. I think, at LSU, he was a guy organizing meetings for receivers, coming in at 5 to 6 a.m. to watch film and all that. That has carried through to here. And what you don't see, you hear guys will talk about like, he's always the first one in, but he's certainly one of the first ones in the building and watching film and all that. But what you don't see is somebody who's hesitant a lot of times. And that's often a clue for a rookie quarterback. Where are they at with things? And I think when you talk to guys about how he's calling plays in the huddle, which can be a stumbling block for rookies because you're not having to do that as much in college, if at all. And it seems like it's going pretty well there. I think we'll get a better sense of that once you get into a situation where it's a more high stress situation, right? Then you get a better feel for that. Or when you get to some of these joint practices in August, that's going to be a great feel for where he's at in the overall development. But so I think by all accounts, it's been good so far. And to me, the key is you can be fooled a lot by what you see in the spring and even in the summer. But what you also look for is what you're not seeing, which was him like in 7-on-7, you're not seeing him run a lot, right? Which you don't want to see that, but he's not having to do that as much, which tells you that he's getting through his progressions, getting a read and getting the ball out. Sometimes you might force a little bit, but he's getting the ball out. And so like, that's the stuff you kind of go on as far as like, where's his learning at? Well, you can see it reflected in terms of how he's conducting himself on the field. Not always perfect, but that's been a good start, it seems.
ESPN's John Keim with us here on G&D. What's he struggled with? Doesn't mean he'll struggle with it forever, but where have the hiccups been?
Yeah, and I think what you definitely see sometimes where maybe a little bit of indecision on a certain look, for example. And maybe they throw a look that you have maybe you're not expecting a cover two. They throw cover two or even a Tampa two, so you get the linebacker drop into an area. Maybe that surprises him a little bit, and like maybe you have to eat it there, or there's some indecision there, right? So I think little things like that, and that's it's really the hard part is, again, like there have been times in the past, some quarterbacks here in the past, that you don't know if they're making the right reads or not. You see the completion, but you don't know if the read is right because the coaches only know, right? Or the teammates know. But in media, you just see a completed pass. So that's what you go on, and you can get fooled in the past. But like I said, so there is the occasional indecision that you would see. And I think sometimes in those situations too, you'll see a Zach Ertz come up to him after their series is over, and just kind of chat with them, or him talking to Kingsbury, a lot about what was going on there. So, but that's been it. And it's, and the other part is you're not seeing a live pass rush. So everything is covered around that. Like once you see him in the pass rush, when there's a live rush where you have to make an even quicker decision or you might get pummeled, then we'll get a good feel for that. But I've seen him go through the progressions a couple of times, and, you look in left, get to the middle, get to the right. Now the ball's coming out. And so, but the indecision at times, which not surprising, but that's sometimes what you'll see.
Okay, speaking of pass rush, and John Keim of ESPN is with us on Grant and Danny Minicamp tomorrow. We'll have the coverage throughout the day here on The Fan. Johnny Newton and the boot. He's now out of that. Yeah. We know. I think he was one of the guys I saw at Nats Park walking around yesterday. They had most of the rookie class out here as Jayden Daniels threw his first pitch. Do we know what his recovery timeline is like?
Don't know yet.
Okay.
Not sure yet. Yeah, and that's something that we'll hopefully get a better feel from Dan Quinn.
But do we even know, there's no thought that he wouldn't be ready for the start of the season, right?
I don't think so, because based on I have not heard that.
Okay.
So based on the timeline of the other surgery that had his other foot, which was the same surgery, he had it sometime in January, and then he had his personal pro day in early to mid-April. So and I don't know at what point he had it in January, if it was mid, late, whatever. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of when it is. So if you have that procedure in early to mid-May, he would be, at worst, he'd be back at some point in training camp. So that's what I would expect. But that's just my own math and trying to piece it together. But we should get a better sense from Dan Quinn this week, as far as, because it'll be asked this week, because now it's it's the last chance to talk to him. So we'll ask Dan Quinn about that this week.
John, barring injury, which is always probably pretty stupid because it's the NFL and football and the stuff happens, but without injury, you got to risk the entire Keim fortune on one of three choices here. Okay. Who plays the most games at left tackle for the 2024 Washington 53? Cornelius Lucas, Brandon Coleman, or a guy that's not on the roster yet?
Oh man. See, in the heart, the only known part is Cornelius, but Coleman was drafted for a reason. They seem to like him. We haven't seen him in pads. So I would say if you broke it down, maybe it's, I don't know. I think in August, we'll know far more about Coleman. I just have no clue with him. I know he's a good athlete, know he has good length, but have no clue. I could see Cornelius playing 7-8 games there, and that may ultimately be more. And would Coleman play all the other games? I don't know. So I hate to even put my money on Cornelius. I'll tell you what, man, I'm looking for somebody else's money to put on that one, because I don't have a good answer on it. We haven't seen. I know his college coach feels like he's more of a left tackle, and that's where he did his best work at TCU. So, but what does that mean here? We don't know. And even the coaches say they haven't seen him in pads yet. So I know what Lucas can do. The hard part with the third choice with the field is who becomes available. And I don't know that you're going to get that starting caliber left tackle coming to free in August, because I was going over the list of guys who might be available, or teams that took tackles. And would they have an excess? And there are a couple teams that have maybe the Jets drafted tackle. They got Moses in a trade. They got, Tyron Smith, but I don't know that they're inclined. Moses is not a left tackle. So are they inclined to release Tyron Smith? I don't know. So there aren't, well, here's the other guy to watch would be, to me, what do they think of DJ Humphries? Because Kingsbury had him in Arizona. And, but he had the torn ACL. When does he become healthy? So is he even an option? I don't know. But you'd have to, because they're so big on familiarity. But man, this is a long-winded way to say I don't know, and I hope I don't have a big fortune because I'd lose it on this one. But right now, you'd have to put it on Cornelius because he's the no.
Right.
But I think I'm really, really curious to see what Coleman can do because he does have good feet and he does have the length. It's just a matter of how quickly do you adapt to playing that position in this league. And typically it's hard for a third-round pick to come in and start at left tackle like that. So kind of figure he might be a midway through the year guy.
I'm reminded of an axiom that if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. And I think that works here because no answer is literally an answer, right? I mean, but by that answer is the answer that maybe they got work to do.
They got work to do.
How about Sam Cosmi? PFF ranked him the number 3 guard in the league going into this season. And their rankings or grades or whatever, that's not really the point.
Right.
This guy's not talked about as a star, and it looks like he's played at that level. Do we need to start talking about him maybe being the best player on the team?
Best player on the team, I don't know. But a really good guard, absolutely. I thought he finished really well too. Like his last part of the year was really good. So like I saw that too, and it's like, okay, well, it didn't surprise me. I thought I was a little bit surprised at how high they had him. Just because I haven't watched him in relation to other guards. I just know that he had a really good finish to that year, and that he can be a very good guard.
And the reason I asked John about like best player on the team status, there's nobody else on the team right now that ranks in the top 3 at their position.
No, there's not. And but I think going through it, I mean, he might be I guess if you say the highest rated player at his position, yeah. A year ago, clearly would have been Payne or Allen, right? But they didn't have those kind of years. But could they do it again? I think one of them probably could. But yeah, no. I think I was actually, when I saw that, like I said, I was a little bit surprised how high it was because I just didn't know. But I'm like, well, then clearly people were paying attention to how he finished because he did finish well. I mean, he's a good player.
John, this group of coach and head coach and defensive coordinator, really good track record working with secondaries. The pelts on the wall resume speaks for itself. That's good because there are guys that I've got questions about. Quan Martin, I thought, played some and played better in the second half of the year. Dubious honor because he was unplayable in the first half. And Emmanuel Forbes is now their kick returner, ? What's the future of the guys that are kind of inherited here as part of the secondary? And you can throw in St. Juice there as well. How do you see this corner position shaken out, and how comfortable should we be?
I think that's, to me, it's right there with left tackle where you just don't know. And for a lot of reasons. I mean, first of all, like Quan Martin's been working at safety with Jeremy Chin. He's a guy that I really liked how he finished. His last 3 or 4 games I thought were really good. And I think he's a smart player, communicates well. You could see, like, he had a game against the Dolphins where he's covering the 49ers. We covered different players. He covered McCaffrey, covered Kittle, covered, I think it was Ayuk, and did a good job in each of those with the situations he was in. So, like, I think he can help them. I think he fits with what this defensive staff, how they want to use guys and the versatility he has. So I feel pretty good about him. With Forbes and St. Juice, I don't know. And, when you look at like Quinn's past with corners, he likes the big corners. Well, St. Juice is 6'3". He does, like last year they talked about this, but you even go back and look at his 3-cone stuff in the combines when he came out, he has good short area quickness. So that is a good help. He is not coming off a good year though. And for, you can look back and say coaching wasn't great, and which is all true, right? But we still, like, what's the player's responsibility in all that too? Because there are a couple of times where it's like, that's not the technique they're asking to play. So why are you doing that? And you made it, so there are things like that. So, but if you hear the same, a better message over and over again from a different staff, maybe that sets in differently. So I think they're intrigued by him. Forbes is going to be very interesting because he does one thing they love, which is take the ball away. At least he did in college. And that's going to open anybody's eyes. He's not a big guy. We know that. He does have good length, and that's one thing that I think it was Quinn or Witt was talking about last week with him, was the length is what they really like. And he's, again, not big, but good length. And so, but the question for him is, will he improve the techniques enough, footwork and all that? Even Darryl Green was talking about that, last year. Can he improve that enough to become a consistent player for them? Because otherwise, then you're looking at like a Mike Davis coming in there to play there, and they've rotated. When we've watched them, there are sometimes where Forbes is working with the first guys, and sometimes it's Davis. But I look at that and say, because there's so many new things with new staff, new scheme, a different way to apply pressure, et cetera, what's the trickle-down effect on those guys? But I'd still say, even with all that, I'm not assuming that there's this automatic improvement because they've got to show it. And I go in there with camp thinking the questions I have are what's the corner situation going to be like, and then who's going to man left tackle.
John, we appreciate you. Enjoy practice tomorrow. It's always nice to actually have real football to write about this time of the year. So enjoy the day.
I will. It's nice to, after the last few years, it's nice just to talk about football. Trust me. So thank you, guys.
Are there any investigations you want to catch us up on, or are you good?
Jeez, it's too soon for that, man. Thanks.
Any statements you've got to go read?